The objectives of the seminar are to raise awareness within the private sector of the voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure. That's our main objective. Secondly, we're looking to have an open dialogue with the private sector as to how best they can implement the voluntary guidelines in order to get a win-win situation. There's one company in Sierra Leone, a bioenergy company, that is following the principles, that is making an open statement that it is following the principles. Of course, it's not easy because the principles contained within the guidelines are very broad-ranging. There are issues still with the community, with government, but they are speaking and talking, having consultations, and this is one of the main points of the voluntary guidelines, is to have open and transparent discussions with the stakeholders, with people who are affected by the investment. The private sector have been involved in the development of the voluntary guidelines right from the early days. In particular, we held a series of 15 workshops globally, so covering all regions of the world, and the private sector participated in those workshops. We actually reached 1,000 people were involved from 133 countries, and that involved representatives of the private sector. We also specifically held 2 private sector consultations, one in London and one in Rome, particularly aimed at the private sector so that we could hear their views on the voluntary guidelines and the contents of the voluntary guidelines. When the drafts were actually negotiated here in Rome with representatives of countries, civil society, the private sector were also involved. So we feel that the document, the guidelines, actually do reflect the thoughts and the processes of the private sector.